For whom all life is sunny. Right, ladies and gentlemen, very, very shortly posted into said classroom will be the promised inflation question, practice question. All right, good one to get to grips with, this one. So it will require you to, well, answer it. It's an extended response question. It's worth, I believe, 8 marks. It's worth about 8 marks. It should appear in the classroom as we speak. My aim is for you to spend about 20 minutes answering it, and that's it. And then the idea is once the 20-minute timer is up, you submit. So it goes in, and then I can have a look at it and see how well you did. All right, so that particular question, and MK has also joined the distance learning class. Okay, good on you. Yes, so it should arrive, and therefore what I will do is I will put the timer on. Has it arrived? Well, that is anyway. Has it arrived in the classroom yet? No. Goodness me. You must check this. It has to arrive. I blame Emro. Isn't that how it works, Emro? Anything that goes wrong, you get the blame? That the rule? Yeah. You're the eldest, aren't you? Oh, there you go then. Hey, that's the eldest rule. That's what I thought. Zafan, are you the eldest as well? There you go. There you go. Blame all the time. I'm the youngest, and I happen to know that the oldest gets the blame all the time. All right. Many a conversation there. Now, so it should be appearing hopefully in the classroom very soon because I asked it to. Let's see. Should be there already. Is it arriving? How do I change it? Okay. I'm going to do it for the future. What time is it now? 12:54? Well, 1:54. That's fine. Schedule. That's not scheduled for the future. It is. Right, all right. Now, let's try now. So I think I've taken the timer off it, so it should, I'm force pushing it out to you. So it should arrive now. Has it arrived? Excellent. So, you will share a big question. All right, question arrives and you answer. You have 20 minutes. 20 minutes. 20 minutes starting from now. Very calm. There you answer. Easy to listen to the group, mindfulness. That was sharp. Wow. I don't. About 30 seconds. Right, people now please keep submitting. Submitting your work, whatever shape or form it is. Oops, stop. Stop. All right, the work needs to be submitted. All right, so we submitted. 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 Done. Submitted. Submitted. The reason why I'm double checking is because, you know, it wasn't that long ago that we had an in class one and some of you forgot to submit. Good. Well done. All right. Now, we submit. Fantastic. Right, now it should come up on here, but it's not very far. Let's try again. All right. So back to our Nearpod lesson. And all right, nearpod.com. And the code TXESB. And it should drop us back into where the lesson was before. All right, it should. So if we could jump in there, apparently we're already there. That's good. And with all of these, as before we talked about it, the code for them is up on the left-hand. All right. So if your computer runs out of battery and you have to all of a sudden switch to your phone or you know, any of those sorts of sets of circumstances, you can quite quickly jump on and jump in. Now, did we talk? No, we didn't do this yet. We've done the previous bit. We haven't talked about the mercantilist view on trade yet. Okay. So now there might be a student or two, learner or two in the room who already knows what mercantilism is? Anybody heard of it before? No? Before? Well, if we have a look at basically our timeline here, all right? So these are the 2000s here. And if we go all the way back, 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 there's Adam Smith. All the way back, all the way back. Ah! That's what we're talking about. So the time period that we're actually talking about isn't the 1700s, which you might have thought that was a long time ago. We're actually talking a minimum of 200 years before then. So we're actually talking about the 1500s, which I don't know if any of you were around in the 1500s. No? Okay. It was a long time ago. To put it in perspective, things that were happening back then. England did have a Queen Elizabeth, but it was the first one. Okay? At that sort of, roughly at that sort of time, there was a woman who was Queen of Scotland, and they kept her in prison because she kept trying to take over England. And then eventually they got so upset with her that they cut her head off. All right? That's the time period that we're talking about. We're talking about a time where Britain, the UK, England was so worried about a country that was just a wee way away called Spain. Anybody heard of Spain? They were so worried about Spain that they fought wars against them, and they were terrified they were going to lose. All right, you might have even heard of the phrase, the Spanish Armada. That's the time period we're talking about. We are talking about it. Oh, by the way, before I get there, does anybody see any word in here? Merchant. Merchant, if you put an H in there, you get merchant. Because that's where the word came from. So if you're familiar with the idea of merchant or merchandise, or what do they say? What's the street lingo? Merch. Oh, we got some merch for you, bro. Yeah? It comes from that word, from the 1500s. This is a philosophy of people back then. If you have a look, there's a little wee image there. Okay, difficult to see. What they are suggesting is that there's a fixed amount of wealth in the entire world. That's it. Okay? And Spain said, you know, we quite like this thing called gold. Heard of gold? Yeah? No, heard of cows. No. All right. There's this stuff called gold. It's quite pretty and shiny. And the Spanish were very keen on it. So what did they do? They traveled all around the world, taking the gold that other people had back to Spain. Because back then the philosophy was the only way to make yourself wealthier was to do what? Take money from other people. That's what they did. Yeah? Anybody heard of a part of the world called South America? Yeah? They used to have a lot of gold in parts of South America. Anybody heard of the legend of El Dorado? Yeah? That's what we took. There was gold there. Lots of it. Then the Spanish arrived, took it. All right? Wiped out entire civilizations of people, just about. What? Yeah? They're going to sail, plant their flag. It's our land now. This is ours. Those resources, you thought they were yours, they're ours now. That's what was happening then. 200 years later, Adam Smith comes along and says, I don't like that. I see your philosophy and I think, you know what? Don't like it. I'm going to write my own philosophy, and wrote what we now know as economics. Back then, it was steal from these people, make yourself wealthy. The Spanish created an empire based on it. The British saw that and thought, hey, that's an idea. Then they created an empire. Yeah? Now, one of the things I ask, maybe not on this slide, can't remember if it's on the next slide or not, but what do you think happened as a result of that empire building? What happened? Where are you now? Yeah. You are in a British-based international school in Southeast Asia. How did that happen? All right. All those years ago, Britain said, oh, look, there's this place called Southeast Asia. That looks kind of cool. Let's go there. Yeah. I'm from New Zealand. Britain said, hey, look, there's a country down there. It's got some sheep. We need sheep. Let's go get them. And they did. And along the way, they discovered another part of the South Pacific, a place called Australia. Heard of that one? Yeah? What did they do to Australia? Britain's prisons were clogging up with a whole lot of people. So they said, you know what? Tell you what, we own this other real estate all the way down in the South Pacific. Nobody's there, except for the people who were there, but that's all right, we can kill them, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to build prisons on the island. Oh, and the prisoners that we have here that are overflowing our prisons, we'll just chuck them on a boat, send them all the way to the prison in Australia. Australia was a prison island. That's what it was. It was an island for prisoners. New Zealand was a farm for Britain. Yeah. We live in an age where English is one of the most commonly spoken languages in the world. Weird. Right? When you really think about it, that is quite odd. Yeah? We live in a world where there's Western culture pretty much everywhere. All right? In fact, it's so prevalent that people actually have a new name for the Western culture. Have you heard this one? It's called the McWesternization of the world. Because we are using McDonald's to basically conquer the world now. Yeah, that's what it is. People are so worried about the influence of the West and its culture that there are now political conflicts between countries like America and China around culture and understanding. But then it's America and they really don't understand, right? But, yeah, all because in the 1500s, these people jumped in boats and decided to sail around the world and steal stuff from everybody else. And if you think I'm crazy, which you probably do, which is, you know, fair enough, cool. If you've ever been to Britain, London, go to some of the museums and have a look at the stuff and see, where did this come from? Okay. All right. Rare antique from ... Rare antique from ... That's the time period. The mercantilists were doing it. But as a spillover from that, they created all of the trade routes around the world. Because they were trying to find places to plant their flags. And by doing so, they sailed around the world. This is the 1500s. This is a little bit after they realized that the world was round. Up until that point, they thought it was flat. They did, floating on the back of a turtle in space. And space was like a syrup, ether. You just floated through it, like that, swam. Yeah, the turtle. All right. This is the time. Nobody could read or write. Yeah, women were basically property, and trade became what people did. And what else did it cause? If people were property, what else happened? They went to one particular part of the world, a giant continent, and what did they do? Grabbed up a whole lot of people, because people were also seen as property, and took them to the other side of the world and said, in your household, here, have this person. The slave trade was also created then. What an amazing period of time. Not amazing as in good, amazing as in, yeah, catastrophic. Okay? But the impact that had on the world, we're still dealing with that. Right now. I mean, look at America. Okay? Because of the 15 and 1600s, a whole lot of people in Britain were basically kicked out. They were actually told to leave the country because their religious views didn't match the religious views of the people who were living there. No, you're too strict, bro. Get out of here. Where did they go? America. The New World. Planted their flag there. We own this land. Yeah. Oh, Native Americans. What did they call the Native Americans? Indians, because they thought they were in India. Yeah. We're going to go to India that way. Here we come bringing guns and disease. Here you go. Yeah. They slaughtered them. They had the land. But now look at what's going on in America. It's the same stuff that happened back then. What does Donald Trump say about trade? The Chinese are eating our lunch. Yeah, that's what he says. He says the way to make America great again is to make other countries worse off. That's what he wants. Because in his mind, it's that mercantilist idea that there's a fixed amount of wealth. There isn't. You can create more. But the only, oh, we're losing our wealth. Oh, no, it's going to, no, we've got to hold on to it. They've got wealth, let's get theirs. Why do you think countries trade with each other? Go. What's the point? I see John Cena's still there. Yeah, good point, Sammer. Good point. Okay. Good point. I mean, the mercantilists thought the reason for trading was to make yourself wealthy. They pushed it to the point of invading other countries. Is that what we want to do to Singapore? They've got the money. It's just invade them. Take it. Right? There are some adverts that went around, I don't know how many years ago now, probably 10 or so years. There used to be an advertising competition, marketing competition, and the marketers in New Zealand and Australia were given challenges, kind of like you'd see today, but they would be given a weird, unusual product or service or something, and they had to try and sell it. Create an actual real life looking marketing campaign with adverts and visual images and all of that. And one of the ones that they did that I remember really vividly was they did one about invading New Zealand, that the Australians should invade New Zealand. It was very funny. And it was about the taking of the resources and all of those sorts of things, yeah? Good. Right. Okay, so as said, mercantilists, they think that you should be in charge of controlling as much trade as is possible around the world. It is empire building. Right. And again, if you're not familiar with things like the East India Company, which was at one point the largest company in the entire world, right? And that's again back in those sort of 1600s or so, right? Where the British Empire said, you're so big, you can carry your own flag, you can create your own army and have your own currency, but Britain. Yeah? But it was a business. So essentially the British people decided to basically rent out their military to a group of mercenaries who were a business. And they would land in the different countries and go to the people and go, you're part of our empire now and part of our army, come with us. So the idea here is that you've got to send out as many exports as you can, but import as little as possible, so that the gap between the income you receive and what you pay is as big as it possibly can be. You've got to have as many colonies as you can, because they're the ones that are going to provide you with the resources, the raw materials. So it quite literally was a race all around the world for colonies. And again, if you do history or if this sort of stuff interests you, I mean, it's amazing. The stuff that happened is just unreal. And some of the countries that we are all from have got a history with this. New Zealand, British colony. Yeah. Even got the Union Jack in our flag. Still. Barbados is dropping the Queen as the head of state, I think. Is it Barbados? Sure it is. So they're giving up on the whole idea of being part of Britain. I mean, look at Africa, look at Belgium, rampaging through Africa. France, they're also taking colonies. Lots of them. Look at the conflict between the Japanese and the Chinese, the conflict between the Chinese and the Koreans, right? And vice versa. Everybody, again, trying to build an empire. I mean, Japan's only as big as New Zealand. You know that, eh? And Japan was trying to create an entire empire. And the country size is as big as New Zealand. It's trying to take over China. China's a big place. Outsmart and outtrade your rivals. It becomes a competition. And if you hear Donald Trump speak, and don't do it for long because it makes your ears bleed, right? If you hear Donald Trump speak, that's how he talks. Trade is a competition. It's a battle. It's mercantilism in modern day setting. And it is a real worry. All right. What did the mercantilists believe, and why do you think it's significant for today? Go. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's in the site. Yeah, everything I do is in the site, or it should be. If you can't find it, you know. A lot of learners will actually pull the slides up and have them on one window, and then the Nearpod on another window, and then Dr. Google on another window, then Google Docs on another window, so they can make their notes. Pull on a window. Yeah. Well, that's what I want. One of the things I ordered from China that never arrived, okay, is a stand, and you clip it here, and then it comes up like a snake, and then you put the monitor there. I want it inside. Presumably, it will be in here. Problem with size is the taking the bandwidth. Right, how are we getting on? There could be even more people added. Now there's 27 of you. Seem to be doubling up. Look, there's 3 Sarvans. There's 3 of you. To be perfectly honest, just 1 of you is enough, Sarvan. I think your mum and dad would agree with that. Good. Yeah, yeah.
No, because you take the good from your previous section.
Good.
Everyone who was, that's why you didn't need to name.
All right, okay. Move on. Okay, now, for our notes, reasons for trading. Sometimes there are goods and services we can't produce ourselves. Okay. New Zealand was very good at producing sheep, cows, hobbits, and rugby players. That's about it. So New Zealand trades an awful lot with its next door neighbour, Australia, because Australia has a lot of things that New Zealand doesn't. To buy goods and services at a lower cost. One of the main reasons why we buy like about 90% of the world's toys from China is because they're able to manufacture them at a lower opportunity cost than everybody else, produce them on a scale which lowers their opportunity cost even further, and then sell them to us at a cheaper price than we could ever hope to make them. If you've been to China, you will have seen it, quite probably, where there are entire towns devoted to the production of one good. All right, so there's a whole town that's devoted to the production of wedding dresses. You knew that? And so if there's a famous wedding, like say some of the royal weddings, within minutes of the wedding being aired, this particular town will be making copies of the wedding dresses. There's an entire town that builds like trunks, suitcases. They're just able to produce on that sort of a scale. Whereas other countries really can't do that. You want to trade perhaps because it gives you the opportunity to sell the goods and services you make to other countries. And you can create jobs. Not the Steve kind. There can be only one. Yes, Highlander reference and Steve Jobs reference, all in one. It's pop culture heaven today. Which quite literally, because it's the Steve Jobs isn't, because he's died. So then there's another joke tied to the idea of it being pop culture heaven. All right, we will move on. So to cut it short, you can also add things like economies of scale. All right, let's imagine that your business wants to ramp up production on a really big level. May not be possible to do that in the country that the business is based. Let's imagine that you, the consumer, want trade because it's going to enable you to get the variety of goods and services that you want. Just a choice. Things that you don't necessarily always know that you want until you see it. Yeah, I like that product, but I don't like the color. Ta-da! 20 different varieties. Yeah. Maybe that there is improved efficiency because you are looking, as we said, at the lowest cost with regards to production. So by producing there as opposed to other places, then yeah, you're going to have better efficiency. There might also be, and again, this is what infuriates economists about our friend the Don, is that there are political benefits to trading. That the fact that you annoy somebody so much that they engage in a trade war with your country, because that's what's happening, okay? Not just one country, several, removes that political benefit. You know, it's these countries need, if they were trading, they might not fight each other. Like real fighting with bombs and guns and things. Yeah? Because let's imagine that the country that you are wanting to trade with is they're the country that used to be your mortal enemy. But they're also the only ones who have the resource that you need. So you're not going to be nasty to them. They've got your product. Can also lead to what's called economic development, which is our next topic. So there's a nice link between this topic and the next one. Countries that are considered to be less developed, by the way, you're in one, okay, can grow and develop. Okay. Yeah, Malaysia is considered to be a less developed country. It is. Not as less developed as some others, by any means, but also not as developed as some others. One across the water, called Singapore, would be an example of a much more developed economy. So these are all really important, really significant reasons why countries might trade with each other. How could the examiner ask you about this? What could they say? What do you think? All right, this is part of the game too. It's not necessarily just knowing the content, it's also thinking, what possible questions could I be asked? Now, you've got a lot of the possible questions because they're your specific learning objectives. Yeah? But there's also things that you won't necessarily come from there, or won't necessarily come from there, that you might be able to think of. One of the classic ones is, if I was to add the word, there, the word why do countries trade? Why should Armenia trade with Uzbekistan? For such countries there are. why should Turkmenistan, because there's another country, trade with Chad? Yes, that's a country too. Yeah. Why should Senegal, that's a country, trade with Togo, another country? See, geographic knowledge too, it's expanding. Amazing. Well, how about this? All right, here we go. Extra for experts time. Bonus points on offer. Does anybody know what these letters stand for? Come on, extra for experts. What do the letters mean? Who said that? Rockstar, well done. Yes, indeed. Honestly, pat on the back, good sir. Well done. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Guess which country is in that group that you're currently sitting in? Malaysia. We're part of that group. Do you know what one of the aims of that group is? Well, one of the aims of this particular group is to basically become the EU of Southeast Asia. Right? Its stated aim is to become what's called a common market. And to be perfectly honest with you, we're already supposed to be in it. Right now. It is technically now supposed to be a common market. Right? It was supposed to be that from, I think, the 1990, well, probably 1997 or so. Right? They keep pushing the date back because everybody keeps disagreeing. Right? If I'm not mistaken, it's still in the future that is the plan. Well, how about this country? Anybody heard of this one? This continent, I should say. Heard of that? Well, believe it or not, this here is called the African Union, which is the same idea as the European Union. These are now going to, or have been, in the plans for a long time. And originally I thought, and it might still happen, that they would pop up all around the world. Okay, for example, you possibly haven't heard of this one. ANZCERTA. Some of you were right in your first guess. Australia, New Zealand, closer, economic, relationship, trading, agreement. Yes. All right. What's the overall end game of that? A giant, say giant, it's New Zealand and Australia, okay? For us, that's big. A unification of Australia and New Zealand. So she can't see. That better? Australia, no problem. Australia, New Zealand, closer economic relations trading agreement. What about USMCA, which does remind me of YMC? Yeah? NAFTA. These are all trading agreements between countries, and a lot of them are based around the idea, like the EU, of unifying different countries into one common area. That's the end game for the EU, by the way, as well. Now, do you know, have you heard of a country called America? Yeah? What's the full name of America? The United States of America. So America in and of itself as a concept doesn't exist. Yeah? It is instead a union, politically and economically, of the different states. And that happened in 1776. This has been going on a long time. Right? Trade is really significant, and politically, it's going to be quite significant going into the future. Right? During the COVID crisis, the African Union has started up again. Yeah? During all of this, one of the suggestions is that if we had an African Union, we'd be able to centralize resources, move the yeah? Amazing. Great idea. Develop the countries within Africa. Why do countries trade with each other? Go. 2 reasons. Identification skill. All you have to do is just identify. You don't have to explain, just bang. Because of this. Go. Good. Yeah. Anybody know what the title is of Adam Smith's book that he wrote? The very first, basically the very first economics textbook, written and published in 1776, as a basically direct rebuttal of the mercantilist philosophy. No? It's usually called The Wealth of Nations. Essentially what he is trying to figure out is how do countries get wealthy? And he ended up by saying, trade. You get wealthier by trading, but not the way the mercantilists think. A full name for the book is An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. Yeah, that's its full name. Okay, terminology time. Dum, dum, dum. What do we think these 2 phrases mean? How much time do we have? Just a little bit more. A little bit. 2 phrases. One says free trade, which doesn't mean it's in prison. The other one says protectionism. There's a couple of graphics there that can help. You've got about 30 seconds with the people sitting nearby you. Have a wee conversation, which means talk to each other. See if you can come up with what these 2 phrases mean. What does free trade mean? What does protectionism mean? Go. Okay. I'm not entirely sure if Zen's awake or not. Anybody know? You awake, Zen? No? I don't think he is. I think he's asleep. All right. Yes, well done. Good point. Ladies and gentlemen, the very last thing that we're going to have a discussion about today, yes, should be, or maybe a little bit, but we'll see how long it goes. Free trade is what? What do we think free trade means? These two terms are going to start off the next semi-section of work and are also going to be linked to a number of questions within paper 2 that you might see in the future. Okay? As well, potentially, as a couple of multiple choice ones might crop up too. Well, what do they mean? Free trade, hopefully what's printed on the side of the tin is what's inside it. So what do you think it means for something to be free trade? Yeah. So no cost. Okay, so we've got a vote here for it being no cost.
Trading without restrictions.
Oh, trading without restrictions. Is the vote there? Zen's still asleep. What? What do you think, Zen? Come on. Free traders. Trading with no restrictions. That sounds a really good option. All right, to those of you thinking, what does it mean? Yeah. So we were not far wrong. Okay. The idea being is that there's no restrictions. None. So when you see the word free trade or the phrase free trade, any type of restriction, any. Doesn't matter how big or small, if it is stopping trade in any way, it's not there. So trade is not prevented in any way. Now that's really hard to achieve, as you can imagine, because there's always going to be some barrier somewhere. There's always going to be some restriction, and we're going to look at some. So therefore, as correctly deduced down here, protectionism is going to be the opposite. So what does protectionism mean? What does protectionism mean? Zafan knows. Protectionism means, again, it is one of the phrases that's kind of the same as is written on the tin. What word do you see inside the word protectionism? Protection, or even smaller than that, protect. So therefore, by definition, what is it that we're attempting to protect? Yeah, I mean the image, yeah, what's happening here? Yeah. Muppet number 1, no. You're trying to protect the economy. You're trying to protect the jobs, not the Steve ones. You're trying to protect pop culture reference number 5 today. That's just amazing. I tell you. You're trying to protect the employment, you're trying to protect jobs, you're trying to protect your industries, you're trying to protect your local culture and customs, you're trying to, protection. Now in the 1980s, New Zealand was doing that. And it was doing it so much that New Zealand got a bit of a nickname, and the nickname was Fortress New Zealand. Because it was like there was a big wall around it of protection. And that's basically, again, the mercantilist philosophy. Happy to trade with you if it benefits us. But otherwise, we're going to protect ourselves like nobody's business. Let's put up walls. Go away. Why? Why don't we trade? What's the problem? Why is America so cross with China that they're banning TikTok? Yeah? Why are they so upset with Canada that they're saying we've got to put a tax on your steel? Why are they so upset with Britain that they want to put, why? What's going on? So one of the things that you are going to be doing is learning what is protectionism, the terminology around it, different types of protectionism, some case studies of it, and then it's a little bit of that case where you get to then evaluate the strategy. And you get to say, well, Burundi is putting up a protectionist policy here. Is that a good thing or not? State whether or not this is good for Burundi. All right? Which means you argue both sides. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll finish there for the day. Please remember the desk cleaning and the hand cleaning. Maybe nominate someone to come and do that for your table. Otherwise, you can pack yourself away. As we say in the land of my birth, I call it up. Goodbye for now.
You right in front of you. You did nothing.
Bye-bye.